You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. Landon informed me he will not be filling in for Jonathan Krause today. There will be a Brewers game on during Your News Now. There is no Your News Now. So I told Landon I was going to let everyone know that since he will not be in this afternoon, that he is intending to get blackout drunk after, after he gets out of here. I'm joking, of course. That's not his DNA, but I did tell him that I was going to make that joke once he informed me that he actually gets a little time. I'm very much like I'm an all or nothing kind of guy when it comes to that. I'll let 5 or 6 errands pile up on me and then be like, okay, I have to do stuff for 5 hours now. I would do that way before I would just do one errand a day for an hour at a time. Like that is my kryptonite. Like I'd rather just I'm either working or I'm not. And it's the start and stop that would absolutely kill me. It was my least favorite thing about doing rideshare driving was if you would catch it at a time when there just wasn't as much traffic as there normally was, and you'd have to like sit around in your car for 10 to 15 minutes just waiting for it to ding, wondering like maybe if I turn it off and drive, like, don't miss that life whatsoever. And I know plenty of you guys listening to me still live that life every single day, and I know what it's like. I know the game, that is for sure. um Before we even started off here, I saw that Lenny had sent a text through the WHBY talking text line asking if the airport workers get back pay. They do. So eventually they will get paid. It's just a matter of how much of your life do you fall behind on in the name of waiting to be paid for doing your job. And it kind of reminds me of, and we're going to talk about airports to start the show off, to start the show off here, but it kind of reminds me of COVID because I am a firm believer that had leadership also shut off everybody's debts, there would have been a much less frustrated attitude towards lockdowns and COVID. I think a lot of the frustration stemmed from, and for the record, some of us had the ability to avoid paying some bills, like depending on the person. That's just it. It was kind of like a picking winners and losers moment that people found so frustrating. But I'm a firm believer that had we done COVID lockdowns and we were all told you're not allowed to go to work anymore, right? You can't make money anymore until we decide that we are reopening society. I think there would have been a lot less pushback had there just been also an announcement saying, oh, and all debts you owe are officially frozen. You don't owe, like student debt was frozen, but mortgages, health bills, credit cards, fill in the blank, car payments, whatever the situation is, had the government come out and said, everything is shut down. You cannot make money, but you also do not have to spend money on anything outside of food. Please be careful about how you're doing that. We also have food pantries set up everywhere. That, I think, would have made a lot of people feel better about what was going on. It's the same thing here with TSA agents. I'm saying anytime the government can't get their crap together and figure out the right thing to do, the way to keep the government funded and do the right stuff, whether it be because as a result of the fault of the president of the United States individually or Congress as a whole, I think everybody who works a government position should be exempt from all debt until they're allowed to make money again. I feel like that's a very basic solution to a lot of these problems. We're telling you, you still have to show up and make sure that the air traffic is going along at the pace that we are used to it going at. Cool. Then you also aren't going to have to pay your rent slash mortgage. And then let's see how mad the bank industry and the landlords get at their elected politicians, because that's how you get these people to do the things you want to do. They couldn't care less that you guys are stuck. KG messaged me before the show even started. Wait times at Intergalactic Airport in Houston, 4+ hours. Anna has been sending me videos of wait lines going outside of some airports. People in New Orleans saying that even if you want to catch a flight today or tomorrow, you're probably not leaving based on the backlog of people looking to get out of the state right now. and fewer people are showing up every single time. And the reason they're not showing up is because, well, A, everybody has a breaking point of how long they're going to work without receiving an appropriate funding. But B, there comes a time when you actually need money because you owe debts. And if you haven't met America before, there is a higher than likely chance that they were living paycheck to paycheck or thereabout, so that after a month of not receiving a paycheck, you're going to be pretty far behind on a lot of what you owe. But we never do it that way. It never negatively impacts big business. It negatively impacts individuals. And as long as it's not negatively impacting you, you're probably okay with it. Ridiculous time to be alive. And that's my COVID versus airports comparison. Now, the people in TSA are making between $45,000 and $65,000 a year. The talentless masked virgins are making closer to $100,000. But unfortunately, the first adjective that describes them is talentless. So they do not have the ability to do what TSA agents are doing. Have you guys been watching the videos? They're hilarious. It looks like any dude I've ever known who's out of his element. You just kind of stand there, you look busy, you're hopeful that none of the higher ups see that you're just kind of standing there with your hands in your pockets and you're not doing anything. There already have been some appalling videos of ICE doing things to people that at least look Mexican, whether or not they are or aren't, I'm sure does not matter to them at all. And they're already making the news, but not in the Minneapolis ways, just in the nobody respects them kind of ways. And I think that kind of bothers them a little bit. But it's only going to get worse. It's only going to go on longer the more we are stuck here. And I did mention to Landon, if you missed the local half hour, we played a Wisconsin Radio Network report from Bob Haig highlighting that Appleton Airport could be one of those branch airports that does end up closing during this long haul due to a funding shortage here. Whether or not that happens, only time will tell. I did express that I am optimistic about getting out of this by Friday, and I do have rationale behind that, and I would like to explain it to you. Before we get into it, Jerry says, I heard an airline pilot say yesterday that all of his flights were more than half empty, even though most of the seats were sold. Wow. That's a crazy stat, actually. Just because they couldn't get through their checks or whatever the situation is, they were unable to get to where they needed to go. I'll tell you, before I get into the actual news part of this, just from a personal perspective, I am not a nervous flyer. I could care less. I zonk out to the second I'm on the plane. I just, turbulence doesn't bother me. I actually low-key kind of enjoy it. There's nothing about flying that bothers me. Airports give me anxiety through the roof. Kept making sure I have all of my stuff, checking my pockets 45,000 times over for tickets. Whatever the situation is, making sure that I'm not mixing up the departure time with the time that the doors close at the gate. Whatever the situation is, that is where my anxiety comes from. And I have been watching videos of it just looks like ants. It looks like confused ants trying to find their way back to the anthill. There's lines, but it's more like just a mass of people in an airport trying to get through. And it gives me such anxiety because, again, I'm a very on point airport person. Like, I'm there way earlier than I have any business being there. It's kind of the way that I'm just wired. And being a media person, we're very time specific. So that absolutely leans into it as well. But I've seen and heard and read the horror stories about what's going on there, and I can only imagine. But I do believe that the tides are changing here, and allow me to explain why. And we're going to use the state of Wisconsin to kind of prove that point, but Wisconsin is not the anomaly here. You realistically could pick just about any state, and you'd get a similar polling data here. In Wisconsin alone, 38% of people approve of Donald Trump's job, 53% disapprove. Nationwide, the enthusiastic people that identify as extremely enthusiastic about voting in 2026 is 51% Dem, 35% GOP. Whether you're talking about the war in Iran, the affordability crisis, the housing market, childcare costs, nothing is cheaper, which is what this president ran on. Quite a bit of things are more expensive than they were, and gas is well on its way to getting there as well. And we're embroiled in a war. And on top of all of this, we're embroiled in a shutdown. Now, this is, I don't know, like, if you're listening to this show, you probably already know this, but I do question how much of the average American is aware of this yet. But Democrats have proposed 7 standalone bills to exclusively fund TSA. They've proposed 10 bills that fund TSA as well as FEMA and all the other agencies that go into DHS other than ICE. And as I highlighted yesterday, ICE can be funded with a reconciliation bill, meaning you don't need 60 votes like you do to pass the budget. You would just need 50 votes to get it across the finish line. So Democrats, knowing damn well that the Republicans would vote to fund ICE for another year or however long, are proposing a compromise bill that gets everything else across the finish line without them having to vote to fund ICE. Then the Republicans, via reconciliation, could fund ICE. Democrats could stomp their feet and say, these darn Republicans. Republicans can say, why do liberals hate America so much? The system works, right? Republicans are on board with it. Democrats are on board with it. You know who isn't? Uncle Donnie. The president, Donald Trump, is saying no. We're not pushing this across the finish line. Do not give the Democrats a win. Every single day that this doesn't pass, there was a time when I was here for the bipartisan, these children need to work this garbage out and figure out what compromise is actually defined as, because I'm getting sick and tired of this. There was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, where I'd buy into that. Regular caller Carlos, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, called in, was pretty angry, said lock him in a room and say you're not coming out until you do what you need to do to get this across the finish line. And I was here for it. I was like, yeah, I admire the passion. I dig where you're at. They did that, right? Nothing, fundamentally, it was normal blue MAGA liberal shtick. It was posture, like you're a revolutionary, like you're against what's happening, ultimately concede to the Republican Party. The Republicans complain about how far left you've gone, even though all the right-wing stuff is going to happen, and we're back to the status quo by June. It's a liberal masterpiece. It was there for the taking. And Uncle Donnie says, no, we're not doing that. So officially, mark the date, outside the box, March 24th. This shutdown is officially laid at the feet of the Republican Party, and until they can convince their orange dad president to actually do the popular thing and open the government, pay these people, and get the airports operating the right way. He decided, in an effort to try and own the libs, that he was going to put ICE agents there and see what kind of reaction you can get. But he's also pigeonholed there because, if you haven't noticed, a good chunk of the Republican Party is afraid to even use the words mass deportation at this point, because they have messed up the immigration storyline so badly that they know that even amongst independents, they are so far underwater that they can't talk about it that way. So the ICE agents are there, unmasked, mind you. The unmasked ICE agents are there. Apparently, the cartel can't get you if you're helping TSA people. I don't know. Any MAGAs listening, help me figure out why it's okay for them to not be wearing masks now. It's funny how that works, isn't it? They put them there to try and own the libs. And it looks as though if this story does get out there, there's going to be a lot of angry people aimed specifically at the president for not allowing this to come to a conclusion. Like I said, I can't wait to talk to Jason Zimmerman on Friday, because he's been flying, and I'm interested what his process has been like here. But I don't understand what the strategy is there, other than knowing that most people within MAGA are not going to take the time to learn anything about why they're in that boat. I mean, realistically, we are dealing with this to a certain extent, not the airport element. Well, yes, the airport element of it, but just the own the libs mentality of the Republican Party while objectively doing nothing else. If you have a pulse and have listened to this show for more than 15 minutes, you know that Wisconsin has a multi-billion-dollar surplus that we have not been able to allocate in any kind of meaningful way. We've spoken with public school advocates. We've talked with conservation efforts. We talked about PFAS. We've talked about funding childcare. We've talked about funding elder care. We've talked about raising taxes through legalization of marijuana. Doesn't matter what it is, the Wisconsin GOP, knowing that the maps were gerrymandered, were not afraid to ignore the will of the people and not allocate those kind of funds in any way. Washington County, Wisconsin, is voting right now to decide whether or not they're going to name a section of County Highway K as Charlie J. Kirk Way. It would cost $50,000 to change the name of it to make a sign. And I am not advocating for vandalism, but I am saying that a 15-year-old Ben would have that sign in his bedroom 48 hours after it went up. But when it comes to owning the libs, Republicans are very excited to spend the money that they have, but God forbid you ask to use that money to feed a poor family or to give students free lunches. Otherwise, that's just welfare. But we're going to name a highway after Charlie Kirk. Don't call us stupid. We will tell your manager. There's a reason why all the polling shows exactly where the GOP is. And I was getting into it with some friends on Facebook that are convinced that Democrats are still unpopular enough that it doesn't matter how bad the Republicans are at governing a country. You're going to learn. You're going to learn very quickly exactly how popular it is. And for the record, I'm not bragging. I'm actually angrier than anything else because I already know the type of liberal that's going to rise from this when it's all said and done. But I am optimistic, assuming that the story that I am telling you guys about gets legs, which I do think it will. The president officially is what is standing in the way of opening the government. It is now no longer bipartisan, and it most certainly is not the fault of the Democrats. So live in reality or don't. Like, I'm kind of at that point with Republicans. But the fact of the matter is, anybody not in the cult who hears the way this story is laid out is like, wait a minute. So Republicans would get everything they want and the government would be opened. And it's the Republicans that are shooting this down, specifically one. It's kind of like Speaker Voss killing postpartum being covered by Medicaid for recent mothers. Just because it's one guy's fault, what party is he associated with, and work backwards from there. This is officially a Republican shutdown until further notice. Bill says, with your thoughts on freezing people's loans, my thought on the student loan was instead of forgive, give 0% interest. So the 0% interest is actually what they did during COVID. A lot of friends of mine took advantage of that, honestly. I was already paid off by that point, but I never win in those kind of games. But a lot of people did take advantage of that, and realistically, it should have stayed like that. Educating yourself should not put you into life-ending debt. That's not a bold declarative statement. That's the way that it should just work. But at least that's my opinion about how we get here. Juba on the YouTube chat line says, getting to the airport way earlier for me just means that I have more reading time. I also tend to book the earliest flights of the day. But even that strategy, Juba, has led me astray a couple times. I'm never flying during the Christmas months again because I learned my lesson. I booked a flight that was leaving in the 5 o'clock hour from Pittsburgh to come back to Appleton. And I was like, all right, it's a 5:15 flight, which I'm up at 4:30 organically. So getting up an hour earlier was nothing. I'm like, get there by 4. I'll have plenty of time. But it was Christmas time, and the line was you guys don't know the layout there, but it was obscene. It was obscene. And there was no shutdown. It was just Christmas. I couldn't imagine being in that boat. Brian says, no SAVE Act, no funding. Well, yeah, the SAVE Act can go straight to hell. That's not going anywhere unless they get rid of the filibuster, in which case I will mobilize the Democratic Party if they do eliminate the filibuster exclusively in the name of getting Medicare for all. David says, I believe the light in the tunnel will surface after the November elections. If the elections turn out as predicted by the polls, the Democrats should be able to freeze Trump. So back to normal, no progress. However, in the case, stopping Trump's agenda is progress. I mean, yeah, that's the name of the game, right? I mean, and what sucks though, David, is that's exactly how the Republican Party build taking the majority in 2022. Now you're gonna have to hold my hand and help me understand why Joe Biden's FTC actually breaking up mergers and his effort to get rid of to make it easier to cancel subscriptions and his efforts to get rid of bank fees and his efforts to negotiate drug pricing. I would need the GOP to describe to me why those were all so unacceptable, but Donald Trump just starting wars and not doing anything about affordability is the way of the future. I'll never understand it, but you're probably right. And KG, who, by the way, does listen in Houston, that's why she's providing these kind of Houston updates, says some of the local food banks are going to airports to give food to TSA workers. I mean, that's definitely a step in the right direction. It's like when everybody was clapping for the nurses. I always say in my personal life, like one day there was a day where no one clapped for the medical professionals anymore. We didn't realize that that day ended, but that day came and went, and we had no idea. That's very real. But I do believe that this shutdown is just about over because there's no way to justify it. Will the Republican Party grow a spine? Probably not, but it's a matter of once the polling comes out again, showing how uniquely popular this is, Trump will change. Never forget it. He knows how badly he's doing, right? He knows because there's a reason why ICE is moving more covertly now. There's a reason why Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance are nowhere to be found in regards to talking about Iran right now. These guys understand the polling, they understand the future, and not everyone is 1,000 years old like Donald Trump, and they intend to have political futures still. They know, and they pivot. They do it quietly. They act like it was their idea that the liberals, blah, 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 blah. But you know why they're doing it. I know why they're doing it. So wait this out. I'm telling you, by Monday next week, this shutdown's over. Mark my words. What time is it? 9:31. Writing it down. 9:31, 3:24. This shutdown's over by Monday. Trump will somehow make it seem like he made some kind of last-minute maneuvers. Meanwhile, Democrats have proposed double-digit standalone bills to fund the government while still allowing the Republican Party to fund ICE via reconciliation. And then Ron Johnson will be screaming about making sure we make it harder for single mothers to get health care in the name of deficit reduction. Everything will be back to normal by Monday. 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. If anybody else has some thoughts about what's going on, we are going to stay in the world of the White House, though. Brian out in Fremont called me before the show even started. I'm at least going to touch on this a little bit, but I'm not going to be breaking any news that none of you guys haven't seen before. But then I want to go into a tweet that the president sent out that it should be a cause for concern. Of course, not for MAGA because they're catching all the enemies, but for the rest of us, I feel that way. Before we go to break, let's sneak one more call in here before we call it. Hello, this is Outside the Box.
Hi, how you doing?
All right, about yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you for asking. So first time listening. I'm on my way, unfortunately, to a funeral, but I just heard you mention a lot of things that I don't agree with, and one was that you mentioned the student loan situation, which was interest-free. I have 3 children that are all in the education field with student loans, and when President Trump put this in place, my children took advantage of this. And I heard you say that this was a good thing. Now, you didn't mention President Trump's name, which you're not going to do, but you said it should have never went back. And I agree with you 200%. But who put it back to that? That wasn't President Trump. That was Joe Biden that put that back into place where interest was being charged on student loans. And this is kind of ironic. After he said that he was going to abolish all student loans, another campaign ride, just like everything that Mandami's doing in New York. So I just want your thoughts on this, and try to be honest, try to be fair.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Why weren't student loans forgiven? Okay, yeah. See,
Forgiven?
why weren't student loans forgiven under Joe Biden?
I mean, why weren't they forgiven?
Because the Republican Supreme Court blocked it after Joe Biden did it. Why did the interest rates return to the student loans under Joe Biden? Because Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, and you're new here, but this is a running bit. Clap along with me. Every single Republican in the House and Senate voted to make sure that the interest rates came back. Why didn't Joe Biden reduce the price of every drug when he was in office? Because Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, and every single Republican in the House and Senate voted against reducing that. Why did gas prices shoot through the roof? Well, Joe Biden proposed a bill after the war in Ukraine started to prevent price gouging by oil and gas companies, but every single Republican in the House and Senate voted against that bill. So yes, Joe Biden was in office.
Can you hold on? Can you hold on right there? Okay, great. Educated right there with some of the things you said. But please do not say, and again, I'm being fair to you.
Sure.
Be fair to me.
Yeah.
Okay. What Joe Biden did first day in office, he was going to stick it up Trump's backside and every other American in this country. Okay. When President Trump got into office, okay, he opened up these pipelines. He allowed these workers to have jobs and get compensated very well in America. Okay, one of the first things that Joe Biden did, now please be honest with me because you're very well educated, he was going to prove to President Trump that he was a guy in charge, and out of 17 executive orders that he reversed with President Trump, one of them was to shut down the pipelines, and he did it. And what's so ironically, after gas went from $1.79 a gallon when President Trump was in office, I have pictures of it. I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin. $1.79 a gallon. Biden shut all those pipelines down, and then our gas 2 years ago was $4.79 a gallon. This had nothing to do with Congress or Senate. This was strictly Joe Biden reversing the executive order from President Trump. Now, Joe Biden wanted to reopen them. He wanted to reopen the pipelines. And those guys said, you know what? We're done. We moved on. You shut us down. We have other jobs. We have other things that we are obligated to. So please do not blame any of the gas prices on President Trump or the Republican House or Senate or Congress.
Oh, it absolutely is on them right now. But you are right. He did close those pipelines down, and then he also set the record for oil and gas drilling in 2023 as well as 2024. So there's a little bit of give and take there. The prices were trending downward in the second half of the Biden years. And again, Joe Biden inherited a pandemic. And I hate Joe Biden, by the way. You're making me defend him right now, and I'm not happy about this. But Joe Biden inherited a pandemic as well as the war between Russia and Ukraine that I do believe his State Department helped facilitate. So I'm not giving him a complete pass there. The difference between those moments and what Donald Trump is doing, and this is that this is 100% an error of Donald Trump's making. When a pandemic happens and the world shuts down, it's kind of difficult to hold one person to account for that. When you start a war of choice for no real reason that people can't describe the objectives, that falls, and you circumvent Congress. It's not even like you can say, well, 75 members in the Senate also said this was okay. This was exclusively a decision made by Donald Trump to go to war here. But I will say we have calls piling up. I do appreciate the call, and you were respectful. You and I don't necessarily agree, but I think there is a little bit of common ground there. So I appreciate the call.
Yes, sir. And you know what? I agree with you 200%. You might get another call back from me because I do appreciate your conversation.
Love that. Thank you. You take it easy. Good stuff there. We'll go with one other call really quick. What the hell? We're already on a 30-minute segment here. Who cares? Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
I'll tell you what, Ben, it's Jim. I'm out on the fringe here. You got me smiling, and the majority of your listeners on WHBY, we love your show. But I got to tell you one thing that Joe Biden said when he was leaving office. Brother, keep up the good work.
Thank you. That was hilarious because the phone broke up for the actual quote, so I have no idea what he said, but that's fine. I could feel the principle coming off of him. You know, we're late. We're going to break. We'll be back. Outside the Box, Ben Gominos, WHBY Political Voices Network. All right, we're back. Outside the Box, Ben Cominos, WHBY. I'm over here pantomiming for the YouTube audience. By the way, I don't know if you guys heard, but I have a YouTube channel now. I talk about it here and there. Make sure you subscribe. Just type Ben Cominos, all one word, into your search bar and the channel pops up. Just click subscribe. I really don't care if you watch it or not. Just subscribe, please. To Ben Cominos. That'd be really nice. Had a really good call with the listener there. A lot of you guys, well, I got a lot of across the spectrum reaction here to that conversation. Ken saying nicely said, Ben. Brian saying the show's on trajectory, is aiming towards top 10 for sure. I feel like it's more top 5, but I appreciate that nevertheless. And then just clap with me, every single Republican in the House and Senate. Yeah, a lot of people like that one. I mean, it's real. And again, I do believe it's part of the rotating villain element that the Republican Party, or excuse me, the Democratic Party absolutely depends on to be able to tell you why they can't do something. Again, and as it gets closer to 2028, you're going to hear me say it more and more. Hang on. If you're listening to this as someone who leans left or identifies as a Democrat, hang on to how frustrated you are right now with how quickly it seems like Donald Trump is able to undermine anything you care about. And remember that the next time the Democrats give you a reason why something popular can't happen, because it seems like Donald Trump could just do things and then they happen. So maybe when a Democrat cuts into office, instead of aiming ice at zip tying half naked Mexican children, aim ice at billionaires who are circumventing their taxes. There's only 978 of them. So use this ICE agency to make sure these guys are paying their taxes. And if they're not, have them embarrass them and like stand in front of their cars with their weapons drawn and things like that until they get the resources that they need out of these people. Like that could be a thing that a Democratic president does. You know? So just some food for thought here as that moves along. David says, I enjoyed the dialogue with the Republican who called during the last segment. Yeah, you and me both, man. Susie says that I'm very patient, which I appreciate. She says they're driving through Kansas on their way home from Phoenix, listening on the app. Appreciated the perspective. $3.19 for gas when we just filled up on the border of Oklahoma and Kansas. Well, thank you very much for listening on the road. And all of you guys can listen on the road by downloading the WHBY app or listening anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere. Just search Outside the Box with Ben Cominos. Turns out Outside the Box is not a very outside the box title. There's a lot of podcasts with that title. So type in with Ben Cominos and the name will pop up there. And lastly, Grant says Biden shut down construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. It wasn't finished, so to claim an unfinished pipeline caused a spike in prices, it was an error. BTW, there was already a Keystone pipeline and it wasn't affected. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I wasn't going to. That conversation had so many tentacles, I wasn't going to unpack every single comment that was made. But fundamentally, the largest reason that, because again, Joe Biden was setting records for oil and gas drilling. The reason he couldn't brag about it is because the left would call him out, because allegedly Democrats are the party that believe in climate change. So if Democrats are running on, we're going to set the record for oil and gas drilling, and Republicans are running on, we're going to drill, baby, drill even more than the Democrats, anyone who actually believes the planet is warming might begin to get frustrated. It would be like if you were an anti-war voter and you found out that both parties were very strongly in favor of war. There might be an element of frustration that you kind of have to work through. It's the same idea with oil and gas drilling and so many other concepts, because it's a uniparty and they really don't disagree too much on a lot of the things that you and I, the royal you and I should say, oftentimes find ourselves debating on this program here. But it's a freaky time right now, because I'm going to be honest. As I've stated on this program before, I have given MAGA the benefit of the doubt for most of the tenure of this show, especially when they weren't in power, because I was more than happy to acknowledge that Bidenomics sucked. That while we were doing well relative to the rest of the world, without having a government without the spine to hold the largest corporations to account, we were never going to stop being gouged. And look no further than trickle-down economics being enacted, and yet we are still getting gouged, because we should be taxing these people more, not less, and giving the American population rebate checks. I gave MAGA the benefit of the doubt that their entire platform was in trans people and immigration and retribution. And I even went as far as scoffing at the wall-to-wall coverage of the Trump trials. And longtime listeners know I'd say either he did it or he didn't. But the fact that we're dragging this out for 4 years is explicitly in the name of, if he runs for office, they want to be able to use this as a bludgeon against him. But when people can't afford to live, they don't care. Look no further than Graham Plattner in the left. It's not even a uniquely Republican trait. Graham Plattner was found to have a Nazi tattoo on him. Granted, it was a less well-known Nazi tattoo. I didn't know that it was a Nazi insignia. I thought it was a skull and crossbones. I understand that there's room for a mistake there, but he shows up, he says, no more funding for genocide. We're going to hold the military-industrial complex to account. We're going to tax corporations, and we're going to make sure billionaires pay their fair share. Any of the social aspects, if he had been to jail before, nobody would care. If he had engaged, like, no matter what scandal, quote unquote, that doesn't involve actively harming people were to pop up, no one would care. If you're wondering why people would vote for Trump and the grab him by the you-know-what and calling prisoners of war losers and dunking on John McCain and all these different factors, if you're wondering how someone can show up to vote for these people, it's because when the economy has left you, and under Obama, the Midwest felt like the economy had abandoned them, they're willing to throw their lot in with someone that they trust to change it. I'm not going to vote in the main Senate, obviously. Well, I might, because I'm left-leaning and we engage in voter fraud all the time. So I might vote in the main Senate race, but I'm on the fence about it right now. But were I to vote, I would vote for Plattner even with the baggage. Are you kidding me? So who would I be to say you can't vote for Trump because of the baggage? And as I've stated recently, I am disappointed. I'm not even angry. I'm like a parent right now for MAGA. I'm just disappointed in you guys. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social a day and a half ago. I didn't even get a chance to get to it yesterday, which shows you how fast the news comes, because you figure you should probably address something like this. Now, with the death of Iran, the greatest enemy America has is the radical left, highly incompetent Democrat Party. Thank you for your attention on this matter. Now, never mind the fact that the Democratic Party may as well just be the Bush-era Republicans of the mid-2000s based on the policies they're enacting. And don't get mad at me for saying that, provide evidence of actual far-left ideology or shut the hell up. I'll let you guys pick which one of those two you want to do. But those are the only two options. You're not going to something trans your way out of this one. For a sitting president to say something like that and have it not be immediately condemned by the entirety of his party, it's not new in the Trump administration, right? But like, this is actively labeling. They say that Iran is one of the largest purveyors of terrorism worldwide. And then they turn around and say, and also Democrats are as much of a threat as Iran is. So are they implying that Democrats are the largest purveyors of terrorism worldwide? Is that really the belief of the MAGA Republican right? Because this, on its grounds alone, should be a cause for impeachment. Because as somebody who I think is probably more radical than an actual Democrat, but I'm actually economically radical. And by economically radical, I mean I believe we should do what America did for 40 years that resulted in the growth of the largest middle class in human history. Call me radical if you'd like. But for somebody to feel comfortable enough to come forward and say something like that in a public forum, Twitter, Truth Social, Blue Sky, any of these are essentially the equivalent of the town square. That should probably say something, right? That should probably say something about who this man is and what he's trying to get his supporters to believe. Because I can tell you right now, I harbor no ill will towards MAGA or the Republican Party. And I see I have a new listener to the show who I offended pretty aggressively here. He says sarcastically that the left commits voter fraud. When they do, I don't have any evidence of that, but just trust me, bro. Yeah, bro, that's all right. But when you hear him say those kind of things, he's trying to get people like Johnny Ripple 8972 on YouTube riled up. He wants people hating one another. And I'm here to tell you right now, I don't hate anybody. I think MAGA has an ass backwards idea of how to address economic woes, but I also believe that they've never seen a democratic left with the intention of trying to fix things. It's an interesting dichotomy to deal with right now. I want to read these comments over here, and I have a short break that I have to get to. So that's what we're going to do. Very short break here, and then we're going to have one more segment before we go to the top of the hour news. So stay where you are, and we'll put a bow on this conversation. But I want to read where things went over here. It's hilarious. We'll be back in just a little bit. Outside the Box, Ben Cominos, WHBY, and Political Voices Network. WHBY and Care Patrol present Women Who Wow Us. We are celebrating locally nominated women during Focus Fox Valley with Haley Tenpass in the month of August, leading to Women's Equality Day on August 26th. Nominate a woman who wows you now at WHBY.com. Catch the CBS Tax Tips weekdays at 6:20 a.m. plus 12:20 and 4:20 p.m. on WHBY. Brought to you locally by Hailing and Associates in Neenah, an accounting firm dedicated to close personal attention, advanced training, and state-of-the-art tech. That's hailingandassociates.com. It is absolutely hilarious when someone who's not familiar with this show finds it, but I'm here for it. More people find it, the better it is. And I'd like for more Republicans to listen. Whether or not they mean it or not is another thing entirely. Anna, read further back in the chat. That'll answer your question. Yeah, strange conversation going on about whether or not liberals are traitors. That's the kind of rhetoric that I think needs to be acknowledged um, coming from this White House right now, and it's very confusing because we have a gentleman in the chat right now, which the YouTube chat is very lively. You guys should check it out if you're not driving. But it's funny to me that Republicans will always be of the mindset like we need to go back to the 50s and 60s. That's when people understood family values and blah 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 blah. You know what was going on in the 50s and 60s? Billionaires were taxed between 70 and 91%. Unions were strong, stock buybacks were illegal, and antitrust was enforced. But when people like the person in my chat talk about the 50s and 60s, I think they meant gays knew to keep their mouth shut and black knew their place. And I think that's about the extent of how people like that are wired. And it's funny to me because I take a lot of this audience for granted. And as the audience continues to grow, I realize there's going to be a lot of ignorant people. And that stems from both ways, mind you. I posted on my TikTok about the failures of Obamacare and why it needs to be fixed and addressed, even from a Democratic perspective, let alone the Republicans' issues with it. And immediately I got browbeaten into like, well, it actually is Republicans' fault as well. Okay, yeah, spare me, take that to another place. But nevertheless, I find it interesting. Um, this is what I'm saying though. It's like the people in the chat line right now. That's who this president is speaking to when he labels people as traitors without really any justification for why, other than trying to other people because he knows his party is uniquely unlikable right now, which is a very scary concept. We've got a lot more to get into here before the show wraps up, including Markwayne Mullen, the most recent DEI hire from the Republican Party. We've got a chat with Jeff Day and Annex Wealth at 10:30, talking a little bit about your stock portfolio during this little moment of flux here, and so much more. So everybody stay where you are. This is Outside the Box, Political Voices Network, and WHBY. Isn't it a surreal time to be alive when you can hear about recall efforts on a sitting speaker and phrases like, and then the pillow guy got involved, and just how crazy it is that that's what life is now? Yeah. No, that's a real thing. That's actually how politics works now. Kid Rock and the Pillow Guy have some interesting political discourse. Absolutely wild time to be alive. What do you think, Hooper? All right, we've returned outside the box. Ben Comino's WHBY Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. If you're just joining us, we talked for a while about what's going on in the airports right now, bipartisan efforts that really fundamentally wouldn't change the way anything was operating 2 months ago. Did seem like they were about to cross the finish line, and one man decided to put the kibosh on the entire thing. So until further notice, this shutdown is officially that person's fault. And then we switched gears into a text message, or excuse me, a Truth Social post coming from the sitting president, essentially identifying the entire Democratic Party as enemies, which to me feels like it is designed to inspire some kind of hatred aimed at people here. I'm telling you, he is going to try and gin up the reactions again. I had people trying to convince me, just for the record, because some of you guys might feel like maybe you've hit a time warp here. It's March 24th, 2026, and there are people trying to convince me the Democrats stole the 2020 election, and there comes a time an infinite amount of patience for people at times. Trust me. And then there just comes a time when I just can't. I just removed myself from the situation because, as I've told you guys, I have to learn how to walk away online because I do start calling people names, and then Republicans try to get you fired when you call people names because they're little baby snowflakes. So, so I have to back off when people can't acknowledge that 2020 was not a rigged election, and anytime anyone claims there's evidence that it was a rigged election, and then they get put in front of a court where they can be held accountable for perjury, all of a sudden, all of that evidence disappears. I'm going to need anyone to actually prove it. Hell, even in the YouTube chat line, one person accused the left of engaging in voter fraud and then turned out to be a very normal dude after a little bit of discourse. I don't know where the disconnect is here with that one moment, and it seems pretty crystal clear to me that Trump is trying to gin up the emotions now so that when the inevitable political bloodbath that is the 2026 election comes around, he can claim that there was some kind of cheating that took place, when in reality, all that ultimately happened was a recoil from 2 years worth of just atrocious policies. For as much as I don't like Joe Biden, I mean, for the billionth time, Joe Biden was defending an unacceptable status quo. Donald Trump is taking us further away in the negative direction from that status quo. I don't think it's even up for debate what we're dealing with here. And I mean, polls are polls, right? I mean, in an isolated instance, they really don't mean anything. But I've seen thousands of polls across, whether it be the most reputable things you've ever seen or something that brings a lot of questions into the conversation here. All of them kind of highlighting the one similar feature. People are very excited to get Republicans out of office right now based on the way that they are ruling. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to get better. And I cut a video about that for Facebook yesterday, essentially highlighting as much. Democrats are going to have two options because they're going to be able to waltz to victory. They can either actually do leftist things and then just win for the next 20 years, or they can do the blue MAGA thing again, and J.D. Vance will be president in 2032, and MAGA will be even more mad. Honest to God, I'm just going to tangent really quickly, and then I'll get into the polling data. Gavin Newsom is genuinely the worst case scenario for politics, and allow me to explain why. It's because Republicans perceive him as radical left. Even though he refuses to tax billionaires, he will not do Medicare for all. He will not actually say anything full-throatedly about continuing to fund Israel. Whatever the situation may be, there's nothing leftist about him. But were he to win, he would govern like an Obama, like a Hillary, like a Joe, like a Kamala, and then things would not get markedly better, and Republicans would get ticked off again and say, see, those radical left policies don't work, even though everything Gavin Newsom would be doing would be reminiscent of what a Bush-era Republican would be doing. And that's how the cycle perpetuates. I think it's intentional. It's why they're forcing these centrists to the top of the ticket in a lot of the polling data that you see. But in the Wisconsin case, a purple state, a state that you never know which way it's going to go depending on the election year, 1,175 people polled from the League of Workers with a margin of error of 2.9%. And Sarah Rodriguez, Mandela Barnes, and even David Crowley, Milwaukee County executive, are all leading Tom Tiffany. And for the record, Tom Tiffany has name recognition. He's been in Congress for a while. People know who he is. He already has the Trump endorsement. And as I've laid out there before, even the Republican Party of Wisconsin isn't completely sold on him yet, because he's only, as of the last batch of Marquette polling, he's only at just over 30% of people support his candidacy right now, and he's not running against anyone. Like, at least with the Democratic Party, the reason 60-something% are undecided is because there's like a dozen candidates to choose from. Tom Tiffany's the only guy, and 2/3 of Republican voters are like, yeah, I don't know. And a lot of that stems from the fact that Tom Tiffany won't condemn the war in Iran. Tom Tiffany won't condemn the tariffs, that even though tariffs are a good idea in a much more measured way, the way that they were rolled out ultimately has held back Wisconsin farmers and has hampered our largest industry. Manufacturing jobs have been trending in the wrong direction since Donald Trump has taken over. They were trending in the right direction under Joe Biden. These are not statements of my support of Joe Biden. These are statements of fact of what happened under Joe Biden. There's a laundry list of things that are out there. And the polling data kind of highlights that. And so the reason you're seeing this effort for Donald Trump to try and paint Democrats in the same light as he paints Iran is because that might be the last lever that he has, because he doesn't have an economy to stand on. The gas prices are not going to be there. More boomers are going to be in elder care, which means a larger percentage of millennials and Gen Z are going to be dealing with astronomical elder care costs. More Gen Z will have kids, and they are going to have to deal with astronomical child care costs. The student debt problem is still continuing to choke a larger and larger percentage of the population, and this guy isn't doing anything to address it. And to the point that we made last hour, Joe Biden tried, Republicans blocked it, and I genuinely believe that's the reason why that's how the uniparty operates, is there's the heels and the baby face. It's just like WWE. And I think the worst part about all of it, though, the most frustrated part about anything that we are dealing with here is that when it comes to corruption, and I've said it before, we're in a post-corruption America, and it's not my choice, but I will never do a segment about Democratic corruption ever again. And the reason that I won't is because I will not allow this platform to be used to bludgeon one political party while the other one gets to skate by and do whatever the hell they want. Brian out in Fremont called me off the air to ask me if I was going to jump into this, and I said, I'm way ahead of you. Don't you even worry. Don't you even worry about this. I've been ahead of this one here, but I think it's worth highlighting. And I am not breaking any news to you here. This is not my opinion on the matter. It seems pretty clear that there was an effort to juice the markets using the war in Iran. And this part is speculation on my part. Tariffs were used in 2025. And any time Donald Trump said, we're going to do tariffs, and then 2 days later, he'd be like, nah, don't worry about it. We're not going to do tariffs. Eventually, people stopped falling for that. So what's the natural escalation of how to do things then? If people stop falling for that, what's the next thing to do? I'm just going to get straight to it. The morning Trump announced that he was halting the attacks on Iran, one person made $1.5 billion trading on the news 5 minutes before it went live. So Donald Trump comes on or sends out the Truth Social post talking about peace, and someone made $1.5 billion. 12 hours later, Pentagon officials were weighing deploying air troops to Iran. Moreover, do you know how long it would take, roughly, to get ground troops in position in order to get into Iran? About 5 days. So he makes an announcement that we're going to bomb their energy facilities Friday night. 2 days go by. I actually came across one Wall Street guy that I follow on socials that said Sunday night, something along the lines of like, make sure you hug your children and kiss them goodnight. It's going to be an incredibly rough Monday morning in regards to what was going to happen to the stock prices as a result of this decision to continue bombing energy facilities, while Republicans, for some reason, will continue to blame Joe Biden because there's just, you just shine the light in one ear and the light just goes through the other ear, just not even going to pretend to try and hold your own party to account. It's embarrassing. Monday shows up, the tweet goes out, and all of a sudden, Stocks rebound over 1,000 points. The Dow right now is not even close to 50 foul, but it has been recovering since that announcement. And something tells me there's going to be another war-based announcement on Friday after the 5 days have come and gone. Oh, and by the way, Israel has already stated as much that they do not intend to halt their military action overseas. So you have that going as well. So was the one trader Barron Trump? We already know Don Jr. invested in drone companies moments before this war broke out. Had Nancy Pelosi done that, I think we'd hear about it 20 years from now. But Don Trump Jr. does it. We don't hear about it 20 minutes later. If only Hunter Biden was involved, maybe we might get some news coverage about it. I'm not going to sit here and complain about Trump-era corruption. I'll sit here and complain about the lack of movement from Trump-era policies. I can talk about the lack of consistency from Trump voters. I will talk about all of those things as I do about Democrats. But one thing I will not do anymore is talk about corruption on this show in any kind of meaningful way as a reason for somebody to leave. Because we have never come across a more corrupt administration than what we are dealing with right now. This is like if Hunter Biden and Nancy Pelosi had a baby and that baby was the spy in the stock market. And MAGA doesn't care at all. But God forbid a Somali do something, because then the fraud is inconceivable and we need to hold people to account. There comes a time when we have to call out what we see here. And we're not watching geopolitics. We are not watching foreign policy get enacted. As far as I'm concerned, we're engaging in day trading, and it just so happens that this day trading results in 150 school-age girls being bombed because our DEI defense secretary decided not bombing schools was too woke. And speaking of the DEI defense secretary, Mark Wayne Mullen is just about to be appointed to the head of DHS. He has no security experience, and moreover, he has a bachelor's degree in some kind of, I think it's like construction science or something like that. Excuse me, did I say bachelor's? I meant associates. He has an associate's degree in construction sciences or something like that, and he runs a plumbing company, and now he's the head of DHS. And it seems as though the DEI crowd is uniquely quiet about this person getting appointed to that position. It's almost like I can't find the what reason why people were mad about all the other DEI examples. Does anybody else have any idea what the white answer might be? 920-281-1150. 920-281-1150. It's racism, isn't it? The answer is racism. I'm pretty sure it's racism. Remarkable time to be alive. Someone messaged me here. All it simply says is Tom Tiff phony. I like that. I can get behind that one. I dig that. You're a newer listener, not newer. When's that from? December. We've only been here a couple months. Text more. It's the kind of creativity I'm here for on that text line. But this is what's going on in the stock market behind the scenes. And if you know me, you know I am anti-stock market from a number of different perspectives. I understand that it's real. I understand that it benefits people. I have a 401k. I will benefit from the stock market, assuming it doesn't trend in the way that it feels like it's trending. But it's a very obvious affront on anybody who pretends to care about corruption and fraud and all of these different problems within government right now. And the fact that the orange man is doing it does not mean that it is okay. And the silence from MAGA on the most flagrant corruption in my adult life will not go unnoticed by me. And like I said, I know this show is a weapon in the eyes of some people politically, because I will hammer Democrats into oblivion, even in an election year, even if I think the left has better ideas than the GOP does. And when I say the left, I don't mean Democrats. But I will only play ball if the ball is being played universally. And not a single MAGA, elected or otherwise, has a single thought right now about the most rampant and obvious corruption that I have seen in my adult life politically, in the name of manipulating a stock market, using wartime activities to manipulate a stock market. This should be grounds for impeachment. But instead, let's say, look at those liberals. Look at those liberals and their accountability. What about the Somalis? Don't call me racist. Jerry says, Mullen is the only U.S. senator without an undergrad college degree, but in fairness, he was an MMA fighter, so I guess that qualifies him to be a cabinet secretary. And again, I am in favor of some of our senators not having college degrees because I actually do believe in equitable representation, in diversity being a strength. And just because you went to college, it does not mean that you are, and I'm not implying that Jerry's saying this, by the way, but just because you went to college, it does not mean that you are uniquely qualified or somehow more impressive than somebody that did not. I think having the perspective of a small business owner in the Senate, a successful small business owner that knows how regulations can strangle a business and knows what goes into paying a worker, but also understanding that those workers, the loyal ones, do need to be paid a certain amount in order to be able to exist. Like, that is a good thing to have in the Senate. But the idea that that person would get nominated to be the head of DHS, and there was an entire movement surrounding DEI and getting rid of these fake qualifications. We need to make sure these people are qualified. And that DEI crowd has not a single question about whether or not the guy with no experience is qualified to head this agency. Waka waka, MAGA. You might be in a cult. Let's see what we got here. Dustin out in Madison. This whole administration has only and ever been about the grift. It kind of feels that way, does it not? And welcome to the conversation, Dustin, but it definitely feels that way. It's hard for me to acknowledge it through any other lens. DSL asks, are prices at the pump based on future prices? I don't understand how gas fluctuated daily based on announcements and whatnot when the fuel is already in their storage tanks and is already purchased at price. Welcome to the corporate greed conversation, but I'm right there with you, DSL. I couldn't agree with you anymore. Look, here's the deal. We're going to have to put a pin in this conversation. We are going to continue the chat about investments, but it's going to be from a much less opinionated chat here. We are going to have Jeff Day with Annex Wealth Management on the program. This is not investment advice coming up on the other side of this. If you are watching on Political Voices Network, you'll probably just see a long jump. You're not going to see this segment, and we'll be right back into politics on YouTube at 1 o'clock. Otherwise, stick around for this conversation because Jeff is going to be talking to me about Iran, about geopolitical events and your money. Going to be talking tax return season and estate planning. All of that is coming up on the other side of the break. And then we will jump back into the angry politics to wrap the program up as well. So stick around. We'll be back outside the box. Ben Cominos, WHBY, and Political Voices Network. All right. So we might have Jeff and NX Wealth Management coming up. If I see the phone ring, we might throw to a very short commercial break and kind of set things up here. I did not receive a call from him. We were expecting that call today. If not, we'll do it a little bit later on in the week. Plenty of good information there with a lot of people showing some consternation and frustration regarding what to actually expect with their stock portfolio. Um, I know I have friends that have been trying to push me into investing more in the stock market lately, and I keep telling them, like, I'll be honest, I I don't know what's coming, and this was before the Iran war broke out. I swim in this soup every day, so when when I saw that when I was reading the tea leaves, I just wasn't certain that anything good was going to come out of this administration, at least in the near future. And I always, in my personal life, I say there's there's bad luck, there's good luck, and then there's Ben luck, where like whatever I happen to do, the opposite was the right thing to do every single time. It's uncanny. The only time I ever got lucky was this job. That was the only time that it ever happened. Someone in the YouTube chat line is saying, great time to invest right now. It does feel like, but again, or it could plummet even further, right? Like, I'm not an expert. I don't know, but I have a feeling there will be another stupid oil and gas related announcement sometime in the next 5 days that's going to send the markets in free fall again because our president just kind of treats it like a game. Um, uh, but oh god, the YouTube chat line. You know what? Sometimes you guys are too much for me right now, but I appreciate it nevertheless. And then, like, interspersed with everybody actually engaging in political discourse, there's one guy that's just like, the election was rigged, and it's very difficult to do a show when you're that's going on. But I absolutely love it. One day I will learn how to process all of this information, but that day will not be today, unfortunately. Um, we've still got plenty more though that I want to jump into, and that actually can wait because I'm pretty sure we have Annex on hold right now. So I'll tell you what, quick 30-second break, and then we're going to do this for real. We'll be back in just a moment. You guys are listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. And just like that, we're back. I told you guys it would be a very short break. Turns out that was, in fact, Jeff Day with Annex Wealth Management. So rather than me speculating about things, why don't we just hear from a professional? Jeff, how are you this fine Tuesday morning?
I'm doing well, Ben. I hope everybody is doing well. The sun is out and spring is right around actually is here. I shouldn't say around the corner. It's actually here, which is great.
Yeah, no, tell me about it. I'm here for it. Tomorrow we're looking at almost 60 up in Northeast Wisconsin, so we're about ready for that. Let's jump right into it here, and I do think it's important that I emphasize that this does not count as financial advice coming from us. This is strictly for information purposes here. I have to believe that people in your line of work probably have more questions right now than you do your average tax season for a number of reasons. We will get to tax return season in a moment, but let's deal with the elephant in the room. Geopolitical events and your money. I kind of did my own layman's version of this conversation to start the hour here in regards to what we were expecting Monday versus what played out. And I guess what advice, what information do you have for the listeners, whether they're in the car, the home, listening, wherever they are, watching on YouTube, whatever the situation is? What advice do you have for those individuals?
Yeah, so one thing is for sure, change and world events, challenges from a global perspective are always part of us. Part of our world. And when we think about those events that come down the pike that we hear from a headline perspective, it's really good to take a step back and understand the level of exposure that you might have in a particular country, in a particular sector, in a particular type of investment that you might have. And depending on how you feel about where energy will go and where healthcare and technology and consumer staples and the different sectors that are out there will proceed forward, you may want to have your investments reflect that as well. Now, what we're seeing right now is that many times people are coming to us for the first time. They're a bit more concerned about what's going on from a geopolitical perspective. And, with the markets, they haven't moved as much as maybe one might think. The S&P is down less than 4% for the year, which is not great, but maybe not as bad as people might think as we think about kind of some of the recent volatility we've gotten. The other thing to think about, Ben, is when we think about investing, generally speaking, our timelines are much longer than maybe we realize. They might be multi-generational, they might be for retirement, they might be for the rest of your life. And so if you do make dramatic changes on adjusting your investments, they might have long-term impact, and that may not be the best move for you. We want to understand what our risk is, what our appetite is for risk in the portfolio, and we definitely want to be diversified. These are the days that you really see the benefit of diversification, meaning you have a nice exposure international, U.S., and then by sector. The S&P has 13 different sectors associated with it, and you want to make sure you have good diversification across all of them, not just chasing whatever energy is doing right now. Although of late, we've been slightly overweight energy in our portfolios here at Annex.
Yeah, what you were highlighting there, I think, is how a lot of people feel about the situation. And I think important, stressing patience. And as you said, it is a long-term investment for most people here. And what's going on in the immediate future is not necessarily representative of any type of long-term gains there. More short-term perspective here. It is tax season, and I know it's tax season because I still have yet to file. If we chat before April 15th, I promise you, I will still be sitting here and be like, no, not yet. We're getting there. It is tax return season. A lot of people already getting those returns. You have some suggestions on what to do if the tax return maybe didn't turn out the way that you had hoped that it would. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so Ben, first off, if it causes you or anybody else anxiety in terms of the tax return, hopefully you get some help with that. So I think taxes can be one of those complicated situations, almost like I maybe liken it to like the boogeyman. We don't fully understand. For many, don't fully understand where the taxes are coming from or how much they might owe until they've done the full analysis. And so what we do at Annex is actually we do tax planning. And what that really means effectively is doing the best we can to estimate what our 1040 will look like before the year's up. And so last year, if you took some action and it helped out your tax situation, maybe you made some charitable donations, or maybe you did some Roth conversions, or you did something else that impact your taxable income in a positive or negative way, it's really good to know what the impact will be before your 1040 is filed. And that's, again, tax planning. That's something we do here at Annex. Now, if you're a little reticent to see what the end result will be from a tax return perspective, I would suggest to you maybe that's time to have somebody take a look at your tax picture as well, not just your investment picture, but to get a really good analysis on that. And again, that's something we do here for clients. We know this can be challenging for many individuals, figuring out their estimates, if they need to make estimated payments, ways they can reduce their taxation. We have some techniques that we can use inside the office here to really help with that. Not eliminate all taxes necessarily, but maybe think about it from a more tax efficient perspective and avoid surprises best we can. That is really reassuring for many.
Do you find, I realize I'm sure it's on a person by person basis, but do you find millennials express tax anxiety as the season comes around? Because I've noticed I'm definitely one of those, and I feel that my generation tends to feel that a little bit more. Just out of curiosity, is that a trend that you've noticed or no?
Yeah, I would tell you it really depends on the less so the age and more the tax situation they find themselves in.
Oh, sure.
So the more complexity that you have in life, the more complex potentially the tax picture might be. And if you're a millennial or a Gen Zer or whatever you are, and you have a W-2, and you're maybe have a little bit of interest from the bank, and you're maybe a 1099 INT, maybe a 1099B from your brokerage statement, for example, and that's about it. Many times you probably have pretty good visibility into what your taxable liabilities will be for the year. But when we get to a certain point of life where maybe we have different tax accounts, like envelopes, I like to say, like Roth accounts and pre-tax and after-tax accounts, and they all spin off income to us depending on what their activity would look like, that's really where, again, pulling it together can be really helpful. And for the millennials, maybe, I don't know, Ben, if you find yourself in a particular situation that you're in your good earning years and maybe you're looking for more tax deferrals, that's, again, where we can think about maybe possibly coming alongside you and giving you a hand there. Show of hands on the radio here.
Yeah.
Who likes to pay more in taxes?
Yeah,
right. And so if you're in that camp where you don't like to pay more in taxes, which pretty much most people are, this is a really good opportunity to just think about that from a tax planning perspective, looking out the windshield versus rearview mirror that tax preparation is. That's the difference between planning and prep. We can really take a look at that prior to it happening, see what you're looking at for liability in advance.
Yeah, I love that attitude. You might be getting a call from me later. Really quickly, we got to wrap up here soon, but I do want to jump into estate planning. We have about a minute and a half left here. Can be an awkward conversation for sure. Why is it important to start that conversation now?
So we recently did an event called Saving the Family Cottage. I know we promoted it on the station here and just got a really good turnout from the audience and really good questions there. And that's a really good synopsis in terms of the assets that we have when we pass away. We want to make sure that we practice what I call good hygiene, meaning everything properly, neatly in its place, and that we have things titled and we know where effectively things will go. And if you haven't done that as part of your kind of financial picture, or if you've done that and you need a second review, that's where, again, our clients, Annex clients, can really leverage our expertise to really do a deep dive in terms of what the documents say and are they proceeding the way they should. This time of year is spring, it's renewal, it's time to refresh things in life, do some spring cleaning, especially in estate planning, really making sure that you and your family are protected and they know what your wishes are and that you have things properly titled and so you don't leave somebody else a mess. And that's really a gift to somebody else, your family, the people you most value.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense there. How can the people listening learn more if they like what they're hearing here?
Great question. Annexwealth.com. That's ANNEX wealth.com. Our phone number is 920-903-9800. And of course, you can catch one of our radio shows on the channel here on WHBY, Thursdays at 4 or on Sunday. And we'd be delighted to interact with you. We're right here, northeast side of Appleton. Ballard and 41 is where our office is located. Give our office a call. We'd be delighted to talk to you.
Awesome stuff. Jeff Day, Annex Wealth Management, thank you for joining us, and we'll chat again soon.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, good stuff there. All right, guys, that does it for that segment, but we've got one final segment of politics before we call it a show. We do have to sneak a quick break in here, and we'll be back for a couple minutes before Haley takes over here. So stay right where you are. This is Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. And now we're back for real. Hello, everybody. Friendly reminder, that was not advice that you heard right there. That was just information. That was a paid segment with Annex Wealth Management. Want to make sure that we absolutely highlight the reality of that for all of you guys. But I do enjoy my conversations with Jeff nevertheless. And that's not a character that I put on. I really do get tax anxiety. And I am owed money every year. Like, it's not even like I'm nervous about it because it's like, oh, how much am I going to lose this time? Like, no. When it all shakes out, I get money. It is just that's how much I hate paperwork. Is that every single April I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to do this again. And then I get through it and it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. So let that be a lesson for anybody that experiences tax anxiety every single April, like I unfortunately do. While we are speaking about tax anxiety, if we taxed Elon Musk at 99%, he'd have $8.23 billion left over. Do you think he'd be able to exist on that? Just some food for thought as we continue along here on the final segment of this Tuesday edition of Outside the Box. And there's a couple of different ways that we could wrap this show up, but I do want to take this. We're going to talk Wisconsin Supreme Court. I got 5 minutes and 5.5 minutes. This will be doable. Judge Maria Lazar, she is running as the Republican candidate for Supreme Court. And yes, I realize she does not refer to herself as the Republican candidate. Allow me to just be clear here. Chris Taylor is the Democratic candidate. Maria Lazar is the Republican candidate. Vote accordingly. She put out a statement. Religious freedom isn't a privilege granted by the government. It's a right guaranteed by God and protected by our Constitution. I will defend that right in every case that comes before me. No exception, no apologies. So to me, that just means that she's not a serious candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court then. Like, I'm just going to be honest with you. In Georgia, and this is what drives me nuts, because we had a new messenger in the YouTube chat today, talking about Democratic extremism, talking about Donald Trump's statement about Democrats being the extremists is the obvious answer. You can't think of a single leftist policy he agrees with, blah, 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 blah. And I remember, I have people that interact with this show, much like the something trans community. The second I say the word abortion, I can tell you exactly what 6 people are going to message me about. In leftist states, you're allowed to kill a baby all the way up until birth, and even sometimes after it's born, and that's the real extremist. Meanwhile, there's really no example of that outside of actual medical necessity. When those things happen, it very rarely is the case, and I hope I wouldn't have to explain this to fully developed adult humans, but it very rarely is the case that a mother gives birth to a child, looks at that child, and is like, you know what? After consideration, put it down, please. Old Yeller this puppy for me because I bit off more than I could chew. Didn't realize it until I looked into its eyes. That's not a decision-making process that people go through. I hope we all understand that reality. Fact of the matter is, the extremists on this conversation are the people like Maria Lazar. It is like what's going on in the state of Georgia. In Georgia right now, there is a state judge who set bail at $1 because this judge is a woman. And that judge understands that holding other women in contempt for murder, charging them with murder for using abortion pills, is the extremist position in the matter. In Georgia, allow me to examine. Oh, it's Republican. Go figure. In Georgia, they are trying to convict women of murder for taking abortion pills. This judge, or excuse me, you know what? I said it's a woman. I completely messed that up. It's a man. I apologize. It's Stephen G. Blackerby of the state Superior Court is quoted as saying, "I think that charge is extremely problematic. That is going to be a hard charge to convict upon," and also ultimately gave the person a $1 bail hearing. In Wisconsin, a candidate is a judicial Supreme Court candidate is talking about religious freedom isn't a privilege, it is protected by God. Okay, but so then by that singular definition alone, then, is it not protected by Allah, by Yahweh, by filling the blank as well, by Buddha? By saying it's protected by God, you're kind of putting your thumb on the scale of what religious freedom is actually perceived as, correct? Or am I misinterpreting this? This is all, of course, food for thought. We only have a minute and a half left here before this show wraps up. But it just kind of sticks out to me because I'll be honest, I am the media. And I'm part of the problem with this. But this Wisconsin Supreme Court race is just not getting a lot of coverage. I feel like the story has already been written, and it is just a matter of time before we see what ultimately plays out here. And based on all polling data, not even for this specific race, but just the general trends in general, barring just a complete lack of energy coming from the Democratic side, I see no scenario where Chris Taylor doesn't come out of this election with the victory here, just based on people's frustration with the system. But when statements like that are made, and that's not an old statement, I didn't have to retrieve that. She made that statement on March 22nd. Strange thing to say in the lead up to an election where we went back to 1849 for an abortion bill. As Jim says, afterbirth is called murder. No need to legislate about that, Republicans. But, liberals are getting too extreme. We got to call it a show. Download the WHBY app. Search WHBY in Google Play or in the App Store, or look it up outside the box on anywhere you get your podcasts. As I've been mentioning all show, we do have a YouTube channel. We stream live pretty much every single day at this point, and I'd love if you guys could subscribe to that. It's at Ben Comodos, and we will be live on Political Voices Network at 1 o'clock today and every day. Haley's up next, Outside the Box, WHBY, and Political Voices.